All right, let's get right to it. The idea that your dog, your slobbery, sometimes suspiciously gassy best friend, could actually thrive on a diet of, well, plants.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. It sounds about as plausible as your cat suddenly offering to pay rent, but it's a conversation that's really picking up steam.
It is, definitely. People are genuinely considering going green for their good boys and girls.
It's quite the pivot, isn't it?
Totally. For generations, the image has been, steak scraps and gnawed bones.
Right.
Now we're talking about, well, not that. It definitely makes you wonder what's behind this shift.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're tackling the big question. Can dogs really be healthy and, dare I say, happy veggie pups?
Huh? Veggie pups. I like it.
We've sifted through a mountain of information for you, scientific studies, veterinary insights, all the nerdy details about what makes a dog tick nutritionally to bring you the straight goods.
And right off the bat, you have to ask,
Yeah.
why are people even thinking about this? Is it just like a trend or is there more to it?
Good question.
For many, it connects with their own beliefs about the environment, maybe animal welfare.
Sure.
And then there are those of us with dogs who seem allergic to, well, everything else.
Oh, tell me about it. Precisely. Our mission today is simple: to cut through the confusion and give you the most important, maybe even surprising facts so you can decide if a vegan diet could be a legitimate, healthy choice for your own canine companion.
Okay, let's do it. So let's jump into the most persistent roadblock first.
Yeah.
The notion that dogs need meat.
Ah, yes.
It's the old, they're carnivores, end of story argument. You hear it all the time.
The mighty carnivore label.
Mm.
Turns out our furry pals are less like wolves stalking the tundra and more like, well, very enthusiastic vacuum cleaners with surprisingly adaptable digestive systems.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
They're omnivores, folks, just like us, capable of getting nutrients from both plants and animals.
The evolutionary perspective here is quite telling, actually.
Yeah.
Dogs have coexisted with humans for thousands and thousands of years.
Right.
And their digestive systems have actually evolved alongside our changing diets.
Yeah.
Think about all those table scraps over the centuries.
It wasn't always prime rib, was it?
Definitely not. Probably a lot of questionable root vegetables.
Huh. Exactly. And as a result, they've developed longer small intestines than wolves, low stomach acidity,
Hmm.
and even genetic tweaks that make them better at digesting starches, like actual mutations.
Yeah, they've got a wider array of enzymes. It's like they secretly knew we'd eventually try to feed them our leftover tofu stir fry.
They saw it coming. This adaptability is key.
It really is. And, Dr. Mogareo emphasizes that a significant number of vets still operate under this kind of outdated idea that dogs are strict carnivores.
Still, wow.
Yeah, they might not be fully aware of the growing scientific consensus that dogs are indeed omnivores. He even mentions studies from places like Harvard, MIT, Stanford.
You know, the usual light reading, so not exactly fringe science.
Not at all.
Okay.
And Dr. Lin cuts right to the chase, saying dogs need specific nutrients. They don't need specific ingredients.
That makes sense. It's about the essential building blocks, not necessarily the delivery truck.
Exactly. And that brings us to the core of the issue. The actual research on vegan diets for dogs. It's not just a hopeful trend. There's increasing scientific evidence that challenges the absolute necessity of meat.
Okay, so let's talk science. And Professor Andrew Knight is a name you see popping up all over this research.
It really is. He's done quite a bit of work on this.
He's really taken a deep dive into this topic, and his findings are, shall we say, eyebrow-raising.
Indeed. His initial study, surveying over 2,500 dog owners, that's a lot of dogs,
Huge sample size.
found a notably lower rate of health issues in dogs eating vegan diets, just 36%.
Compared to...
Compared to 49% in dogs on conventional meat-based diets and 43% in those eating raw meat. Those are pretty significant differences.
Right. But we all know the saying, correlation doesn't equal your dog suddenly doing your taxes.
Uh-huh.
Sadly, no.
That's where his follow-up study comes in. This is where it gets really interesting. They controlled for a whole laundry list of factors. Yeah, like age, breed, sex, whether they were neutered, even their exercise levels. Basically trying to isolate the diet effect.
And even after accounting for all those variables, the vegan dogs still showed good overall health. And perhaps more surprisingly, they needed less medication and visited the vet less often.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty striking.
The specifics are remarkable. We're talking about a 21% drop in vet visits,
Wow.
a whopping 34% reduction in medication use,
Huge.
and they were 48% less likely to be on a special therapeutic diet just by switching from conventional meat to vegan. plus a 14% overall reduction in health disorders.
That's like your dog aged backward a few years, health-wise. It's pretty compelling stuff.
It really is.
And connecting this to specific conditions, the research found a 50 to 61% lower risk for 6 common health problems in vegan dogs compared to those on traditional meat-based diets.
What kind of problems?
Things like issues with weight, ears, the musculoskeletal system, and the gastrointestinal tract. That's quite a list of common complaints.
It's almost like the plant kingdom is staging a wellness intervention for our pups.
Maybe so.
Now, another study that caught my attention was that 2024 PLOS-1 study. This one was clever because they used the same 15 dogs as their own control group, right?
Exactly. The dogs were switched from a meat-based diet to a plant-based one, and they tracked the outcomes. It's a strong design.
And what did they find?
Well, they maintained a healthy body weight, or even improved if they were carrying a little extra padding to begin with.
Okay.
And surprisingly, vitamin D levels actually normalized in dogs who were deficient, despite the common belief that it mainly comes from animal sources.
Huh. That is surprising. And here's a plot twist. In some cases, the levels of L-taurine and L-carnitine,
Ah, yes, the usual suspects.
those amino acids often cited as potential concerns for vegan dogs, actually went up.
Right, which suggests that well-formulated diets are addressing those concerns effectively. Plus, the study highlighted pea protein as a key ingredient and its potential benefits for heart health.
Who knew peas were secret heart heroes? Good old peas.
It's also important to consider the 2023 systematic review. While it acknowledged some limitations, like relying on odor surveys,
Which can be subjective, yeah.
it concluded that there was no convincing evidence of major impacts of vegan diets on dog or cat health, and consistently noted positive outcomes for vegan diets in dogs specifically.
Okay, so the overall picture from the research seems cautiously optimistic.
I'd say increasingly optimistic, especially for dogs. And if all of that wasn't enough to make you reconsider what's in your dog's bowl, Professor Knight even suggests that dogs on properly formulated vegan diets could potentially live up to 1.5 years longer.
Whoa, 1.5 years. That's practically an extra doggy bar mitzvah. That's significant.
It really is. But, and this is the crucial part,
There's always a but.
the phrase that keeps appearing is properly formulated diets.
That's right. You can't just start feeding your dog your leftover salad and expect miracles.
No, definitely not. This isn't an excuse to finally get rid of that wilted spinach in the back of your fridge. We need to talk about getting the right nutrients. Protein is usually the first thing people worry about, right?
Absolutely. Where do they get enough?
It is a valid concern. Dogs require protein for, well, everything. While animal proteins are generally considered complete, meaning they contain all 10 essential amino acids dogs need,
Right.
plant-based diets can absolutely provide these as well. You just have to be smart about it.
Think about it. Legumes, like peas, chickpeas, lentils.
Soy, potato protein, nutritional yeast, which, by the way, sounds suspiciously like something from a sci-fi movie.
It totally does.
Yeah.
Engage the nutritional yeast.
Uh-huh. And even quinoa. It's like building a superhero team of plant-based proteins.
A delicious, nutritious superhero team.
And because plant proteins can sometimes be a bit less digestible for dogs than animal proteins,
Okay.
commercial vegan dog foods often increase the overall protein content, just to make sure they're getting sufficient amounts of those crucial essential amino acids.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about those specific amino acids, taurine and L-carnitine. They tend to be a hot topic in the vegan dog food debate.
They are, and it's true that they are often found in lower levels in plant-based ingredients naturally.
So what's the solution?
That's why good quality vegan dog foods will directly supplement these essential nutrients. It's added right in.
Ah, okay.
And as we saw in that 2024 study, this supplementation can be very effective, sometimes even correcting previous deficiencies.
What about vitamins and minerals? That's another area where people often express concern, like B12.
Absolutely. Vitamin B12, for example, isn't naturally present in plant-based foods in reliable amounts, so supplementation is a necessity. Non-negotiable.
Right.
Vitamin D is another one. The D2 form found in plants isn't as readily utilized by dogs as the D3 form, which is typically animal-derived, though plant-derived D3 is becoming available.
Okay.
Calcium needs to be carefully balanced with phosphorus, and plant-based sources of iron and zinc can be a bit less easily absorbed by dogs due to things like phytates.
So it sounds like a bit of a nutritional puzzle to solve if you're not careful.
It can be if you're trying to DIY it without expertise. But the good news is that reputable commercial vegan dog foods are formulated by experts, by nutritionists who understand these specific needs.
They've done the puzzle for you.
Pretty much. They include added vitamins and minerals in forms that are easily absorbed by a dog's body, what we call bioavailable forms. And interestingly, the heating process used to make kibble actually helps improve the digestibility of those plant-based proteins too.
Oh, that's useful to know. So, looking beyond just the study results, what are some of the real-world benefits dog owners might actually see if they switch to a well-formulated vegan diet?
Well, both the research and just anecdotal evidence suggest a few interesting possibilities. A big one for some dogs is a reduction in allergies and food sensitivities.
Ugh, the itchy dogs.
Exactly. Improved coat health, potentially less of that characteristic doggy breath.
Less doggy breath. Now you're talking my language. That alone might be worth it. What else?
Better weight management has been reported, and even a possible decrease in inflammation overall. There's also mention of potentially lower risks of certain types of cancer, reduced rates of obesity, which is a huge issue,
Massive problem.
and fewer problems with the gastrointestinal tract and liver. And interestingly, some owners even reported their dogs seemed happier, had more energy, and were even less aggressive.
Really? Less aggressive.
Yeah, maybe all those extra veggies mellow them out. Who knows?
It's like a plant-powered personality makeover. Okay. Now, we can't ignore the bigger picture. What are the environmental and ethical considerations driving some of this interest in vegan pet food?
These are significant factors for many pet owners, definitely. The pet food industry accounts for a surprisingly large percentage of global livestock consumption.
How large are we talking?
Estimates vary, but some sources suggest somewhere between 9 and maybe even 20% in the United States.
20% from pet food. That's huge. That's like if all the pampered pooches formed their own nation, they'd have a bigger appetite for meat than a Viking horde.
It's a massive footprint. Precisely. So, choosing vegan pet food could lead to substantial reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, land use, water consumption. The environmental impact is pretty clear.
Wow.
And then there's the ethical angle. Dr. Lin touches on the concerns surrounding factory farming, which obviously resonates with many animal lovers.
Right. If you're concerned about farm animal welfare, feeding meat to your pet creates a bit of a conflict.
Exactly.
Okay, so there are potential upsides, environmentally, ethically, and maybe even health-wise. But we have to be realistic and talk about the potential downsides, too. What are the risks?
The primary risks really center around nutritional deficiencies if the diet isn't properly balanced. That's the big caveat.
So what could go wrong?
Potential issues with protein intake, not getting enough, or the right balance of those crucial amino acids like taurine and carnitine.
The ones we talked about.
Yep. Also calcium, vitamin B12, and essential fatty acids. These are all critical.
And what kind of health problems could these deficiencies actually lead to in a dog?
Well, poorly formulated vegan diets there's certainly a noticeable shift occurring. I wouldn't say universal acceptance, but
Progress.
yes, progress. While there was initial hesitation, maybe even resistance, a growing number of vets are recognizing that nutritionally complete vegan diets can be a suitable option for many adult dogs.
Any official bodies weighing in?
Yeah, the British Veterinary Association, for instance, now states that it's possible to feed a nutritionally sound plant-based diet.
Possible. Okay, not exactly a ringing endorsement, but it's something.
It's a significant change from previous stances.
Yeah.
But they're not completely on board, handing out tofu treats at checkups just yet.
Probably not.
The BVA still advises caution regarding the balance of these diets, points out the limited amount of long-term data available, which is a fair point,
True.
and stresses the importance of closely monitoring a dog's health on such a diet. And Dr. Melgarejo's experience facing resistance, possibly due to funding ties with meat-based companies, highlights that there can still be some skepticism or institutional inertia.
Right, follow the money sometimes. Okay, so if someone is seriously thinking about making the switch, what are the practical steps? How do they do it safely? Let's start with commercial foods.
Okay, if you're going with a commercial food, look for that AAFCO statement. It should say it's formulated to meet the nutritional levels established by AAFCO for a specific life stage, like adult maintenance.
AAFCO.
Check if the company conducts feeding trials. It's even better. It means they've actually fed it to dogs and monitored them. And carefully review the ingredient list. Look for those added supplements, taurine, L-carnitine, B12, vitamin D.
Make sure they're actually in there.
Exactly. Ensure the protein content is adequate. Check the calcium to phosphorus ratio is appropriate. Professor Knight also recommends choosing brands that openly collaborate with veterinary nutrition experts. Look for transparency.
Okay, good advice. What about those brave souls considering whipping up their own vegan dog food at home? Sounds ambitious.
It is. It's a much more complex undertaking. As I said, it absolutely requires working closely with a board-certified veterinary nutritionist.
Not just Dr. Google.
Definitely not Dr. Google. You'll need to use a variety of plant-based protein sources to cover all the amino acids. Supplement diligently with things like B12, D3, taurine, carnitine, essential fatty acids like EADHA, calcium, zinc, iron.
Wow, it's a whole chemistry experiment.
Pretty much. Precise calculations are essential. You might need to use specialized nutritional balancing supplements designed for homemade vegan diets. It requires a serious level of commitment and precision. Rotating ingredients is also often recommended.
Okay, so message received. Homemade is hard mode.
Very hard mode. And regardless of whether you choose commercial or homemade, keeping a close eye on your dog's health is paramount, right?
Absolutely crucial.
Frequent veterinary checkups, particularly in the initial months after switching, are really important.
What should the vet be checking?
Blood work can help identify any potential nutritional imbalances early on. You should also regularly monitor your dog's weight, muscle condition, make sure they aren't losing muscle mass, their coat quality, energy levels, and, of course, their stool consistency.
The glamorous part of dog ownership.
Always. Consider urine tests as well, especially checking for crystals or abnormal pH. And be prepared to adjust the diet as needed based on your vet's recommendations and how your dog is doing.
Now, are there specific types of dogs who might actually see more benefits from a vegan diet? Like, who is this potentially really good for?
Interestingly, yes, there's some evidence suggesting that dogs with certain health conditions might do particularly well.
Such as?
Things like inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, certain types of liver and kidney disorders, food-responsive dermatitis, those itchy skin conditions often triggered by animal proteins.
Right, the allergy dogs again.
Exactly. And potentially even some types of cancer, though more research is needed there. Dr. Joe Barches is quoted mentioning potential benefits for dogs with kidney disease, specific kinds of urinary stones called urate stones, and IBD.
So for specific health cases, it could be a therapeutic option.
Potentially, yes, under veterinary guidance. By eliminating common animal protein allergens, it can sometimes significantly reduce inflammation and allergy symptoms.
Okay, so there are some potential vegan VIPs in the canine world. But on the flip side, are there any dogs who should probably avoid vegan diets altogether, or at least approach with extreme caution?
Puppies are generally considered a higher risk group.
Why puppies specifically?
Their nutritional needs during that rapid growth phase are incredibly high and very specific. Achieving that precise balance of amino acids, calcium, phosphorus, energy density on a vegan diet can be much more challenging, and the consequences of getting it wrong are more severe.
Makes sense. More room for error.
Exactly. Most veterinarians still strongly recommend conventional meat-based puppy food formulated for growth.
Okay. Anyone else?
Similarly, senior dogs with significant pre-existing health issues, think muscle wasting, complex metabolic disorders, multiple conditions happening at once, or even just a poor appetite might not be ideal candidates. Their bodies might struggle to utilize nutrients efficiently.
So individual assessment is key, especially for seniors or dogs with health issues.
Absolutely crucial. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So if someone decides after consulting their vet, okay, I'm doing this, what's the best way to actually make the switch? You can't just swap out the kibble overnight, can you? Unless you enjoy cleaning up unpleasant surprises.
No, definitely not. A gradual transition is key to minimize digestive upset. Think tummy troubles.
So how gradual?
The usual recommendation is to mix a small amount of the new vegan food with their current food over a period of maybe 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Start with something like 25% new food, 75% old food for a few days. Then go to 50-50, then 75% new, and finally 100% new food, watching closely at each stage.
And what are the telltale signs to watch for during this transition period? Any red flags that should make owners pause or call the vet?
Keep a close eye on their stool. Any signs of prolonged diarrhea or constipation are worth noting.
Right.
Also monitor their water intake. Are they suddenly drinking way more or less? Their energy levels, are they becoming lethargic? The condition of their coat, their weight, and their overall behavior.
Any major warning signs?
Vomiting is definitely a sign to slow down the transition considerably, or stop and consult with your veterinarian before proceeding. Their gut might just need more time to adapt, or it might not be the right food for them.
Got it. Slow and steady wins the race and avoids carpet stains.
Precisely.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but there are still some lingering misconceptions out there. Let's tackle a couple of the big ones, starting with the classic, Dogs are carnivores. We've touched on it, but let's really drive the point home.
Right. As we've discussed, the overwhelming scientific evidence, the evolutionary history,
Yeah.
it all points to dogs being omnivores, not obligate carnivores like cats.
Big difference.
Huge difference. Their history alongside humans, those genetic adaptations for digesting starches we talked about, the actual structure of their intestinal tract, it all supports their ability to thrive on a varied diet that includes plant-based options.
They aren't just wolves in miniature living rooms, despite what they might think when the mailman comes.
Haha, exactly. Dr. Lin also emphasized these evolutionary adaptations.
And what about the protein argument? The idea that plant-based protein is somehow inferior or insufficient for dogs. Still hear that one a lot.
That's another common misconception. While it's true that individual plant-based ingredients might not contain the complete profile of all essential amino acids on their own.
Like meat might.
Right.
Right.
But combining different plant protein sources like legumes with grains or potato protein can absolutely create a complete and balanced amino acid profile.
So it's about the blend.
It's about the blend. And as we've mentioned, high-quality commercial vegan dog foods are specifically formulated to include any necessary supplemental essential amino acids, like taurine and L-carnitine, to ensure all their needs are met. Digestibility is also a factor, and processing methods like heating actually improve how easily dogs can utilize plant-based proteins.
And often these vegan foods actually have higher total protein content anyway, right?
Often, yes, precisely to guarantee nutritional adequacy. Ultimately, it's about meeting the specific nutrient requirements, not necessarily the ingredient requirements.
That University of Illinois study seemed to back that up too, didn't it?
Yes, that 2023 study was quite positive. They looked at 2 human-grade vegan diets fed to beagles.
Fancy beagles.
Very fancy. They found the diets provided adequate nutrition, met all the AAFCO standards for adult dogs, were highly digestible,
Good signs.
and even led to some positive changes in the dog's blood metabolites and their gut microbiome. Professor Kelly Swanson, one of the researchers, made that key point again. Animals don't have ingredient requirements. They have nutrient requirements.
Nutrient requirements, not ingredient requirements. That's a good line.
It really sums it up. The study also noted lower levels of triglycerides and cholesterol in the vegan-fed dogs, and perhaps a bonus for sensitive noses,
Oh, I'm ready for this bonus.
a reduction in fecal odor.
Lower fecal odor. Suddenly, veganism sounds a lot more appealing. Sign me up, or sign the dog up.
Haha. It's a potential perk. But then, just to present a balanced view, there was that Vet Times article that presented a slightly different perspective, right?
Yeah, what was that about?
It reported on a reanalysis of some of Professor Knight's earlier data, suggesting perhaps a more minimal direct link between the vegan diet itself and some health outcomes, arguing that factors like age and the frequency of vet visits might be more significant indicators of reported health than diet alone.
So, questioning the strength of the diet link.
Essentially, yes. However, it's important to note that Professor Andrew Knight responded, standing by his original findings and methodology, and also reiterating the strong environmental and ethical arguments for considering vegan diets regardless.
Okay, so a bit of scientific back and forth, which is normal.
Exactly. It highlights that research is ongoing, data can be interpreted differently, and it's good to be aware of different perspectives within the scientific community. It doesn't necessarily negate the earlier findings, but adds nuance.
Okay, so bringing it all together in a nice, neat, plant-based package, what's the main message you want to leave our listeners with today after wading through all this?
I think the key takeaway is that well-formulated, nutritionally complete vegan diets can be a safe and potentially healthy option for many adult dogs.
Can be.
Yes, can be. This is supported by a growing body of scientific evidence. However, and it's a big center, however, it is absolutely crucial to pay close attention to their specific nutritional needs. This isn't something to approach casually or without doing your homework.
And what's the #1 piece of advice, the absolute must-do, for anyone in considering making this dietary switch for their furry friend?
Without a single doubt, consult with your veterinarian. Ideally, one who is open to discussing nutrition options, or even better, a board-certified veterinary nutritionist before making any significant changes to your dog's diet.
Talk to the pros.
Always. They can assess your dog's individual health status, age, lifestyle, any pre-existing conditions, and provide tailored guidance on the safest and most appropriate approach, whether that's a vegan diet or something else entirely.
So, do your homework, scrutinize those ingredient lists on commercial foods, look for AAFCO statements and reputable brands. And if you're dreaming of becoming a vegan dog food chef in your own kitchen,
Please seek professional guidance from a veterinary nutritionist first. Don't risk your dog's health.
message loud and clear.
Exactly. As our understanding of canine nutrition evolves and more high-quality, well-researched plant-based options become available, the traditional, almost dogmatic view of dogs strictly needing meat is definitely being challenged.
Yeah.
It encourages us all to really consider what our dogs need to truly thrive, beyond just what we've always assumed or been told. Think nutrients, not just ingredients.
It certainly does. Food for thought, you might say. And after all this talk, I'm almost tempted to try some of that fancy vegan kibble myself. Almost.
Uh-huh. Let me know how that goes.
I probably won't. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.